because you're lifelong Republicans and you know that you want a better direction for our country. And there's also a lot of folks who are here that I call Kamala curious. They have some questions about whether or not she's the right person
because you're
for their
lifelong
vote.
Republicans.
And
you know
we're going to
you
be
want a
speaking
better
to
direction for our
everybody
country.
who
And there's
has questions
also
and wants to
a
celebrate.
lot of folks
This has
who are
been
here
a joyful
that I call
campaign,
Kamala curious.
and so I hope that the
They have
call
some
tonight
questions
is
about
in
whether
that
or not
spirit.
she's the right person
Because
you're
so
lifelong
I am going to
Republicans.
pass things off
you
to
know
our
that you
moderator
want better
this
direction
evening.
for everybody
You know
and
her
there's
as a
has
fearless
questions and wants to
advocate
sell a lot of folks who are
and a
here
strong voice for
and so I
the
hope that they
country.
have some
She's
questions
a former
about whether or
White
not
House
she's the right
official,
person because you're
a lady.
lifelong.
Thank you, Reed. For joining us this evening. And thanks to Reed Howard and the team for pulling the logistics together for this effort. I'm Olivia Troy, and I'm honored to host and moderate this meeting of Republicans for Kamala Harris. In this moment, when political polarization is at an all-time high and party affiliation is tied to personal identity, perhaps more than ever, this inspiring group of individuals joining us represents a truly independent breed of American, one willing to take a courageous and principled stand for the country that we all cherish. They each have their own story for why they're putting country over party and why they're supporting Vice President Kamala Harris in this election this November. Tonight, you'll hear more about the personal journeys that brought us all here. My own story as a career national security official led me to a post in the Trump White House as an advisor to former Vice President Mike Pence. Working in the White House was the realization of a lifelong dream, and I loved my job and the chance to serve my country in that way. So leaving the Trump White House was one of the most difficult decisions of my life, but it became a necessary one. When I could no longer, in good faith, serve an administration that I knew was actively failing the American people. As a firsthand witness to the chaos of the Trump presidency behind closed doors, I can say this: we cannot go back. If you're joining us tonight, you likely have your own story too. And we're here to tell you, you're not alone. We get that it's not easy to make this choice. I know I do. We understand the ideological commitments and, yes, even the personal connections we're putting on the line to take this public stand. But like you, our commitments to the Constitution, to the integrity of the American democracy, to the rule of law, to sane, rational governance, and to basic human decency and civility are transcendent, especially at this critical moment. These are the ideals that unite us, regardless of our political background or voting history. And these are the ideals that Kamala Harris and Tim Walsh share with us. Together, we stand with them for a vision of America where leadership is guided by integrity and a genuine concern for the common good. We recognize that a stable and effective government requires public servants who are willing and able to do the hard work of finding common ground and building on it. And above all, who respect the will of the American people. Donald Trump has already proven he is incapable of either. And his running mate, J.D. Vance, has admitted as much. You've heard this before. The future of our democracy will be permanently shaped, for better or worse, by the outcome of this election. That's not hyperbole. Your presence here tonight demonstrates that you recognize that. Now we're asking you to take the next step, join our diverse coalition of Republicans not only rejecting Trump and his dead-end MAGA movement, but actively supporting Kamala Harris in this election. Here are some things you can do to support this movement. First, You can tell your story. You can volunteer. Please make a selfie video and share it. And tell a friend. This coalition grows with your voices and your outreach. We need your support, and we need you to support each other. If you're still not convinced, we hope our stories this evening will help persuade you. And with that, we're going to kick things off with one of my favorite members of the Coalition of the Sane, the former U.S. Congressman from Virginia, Denver Riggleman.
Hey, everybody. I'm a little bit, it's pretty incredible that I get to be the leadoff hitter for this incredible group of Republicans for Harris. And I know a lot of these individuals personally, so it's an honor. And, you know, this is pretty crazy. My journey is really going from the Freedom Caucus all the way to here with you freedom lovers today. And I have a pretty incredible background in counterterrorism for 20 years. And I served on the January 6th committee as a senior technical advisor. And there's somebody else here, Adam Kinzinger, who was also there, where we got to see things that I think were pretty shocking. You know, I got to see the Meadows text messages. It was us who deciphered them. I got to see the Ginny Thomas text messages, if everybody remembers that. But the great thing about me is that data and facts are what I like to look at and what I like to see. So I'm going to make this simple. I'm the leadoff hitter here, and I just don't want to hit a single or a double. We have so many incredible people here. We don't have a lot of time. So I'm just going to go with the 5 things or the 5 reasons why I think we shouldn't be voting for former President Trump. Number 1, I don't want to vote for a felon. I think that's sort of ridiculous with 34 felony counts. Number 2, I don't want to actually vote for a sexual assailant or a rapist. I think that actually should be something Republicans shouldn't be supporting. I also don't want to vote for anybody who supported the January 6th insurrection. That's pretty bad. I also don't want to vote for anybody who supports dictators like Vladimir Putin. I don't want to vote for anybody who's a conspiracy theorist. I don't want to vote for anybody who can't tell the truth and who's an inveterate liar. Now, I hate to be this blunt, but the fact is, I was on the Freedom Caucus. The fact is, I served with many people on this panel today, and I know them personally. But I also know that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, they're the future. We can't look back. So when you see the data and you see the awful things that I've seen, you saw the command and control infrastructure of January 6th. There's no way as a Republican that I could vote for anybody who's anti-constitution also. So I want to be quick. There's so many people here to talk today. But my love for country and the love of country for these heroes that are on this call today is what drives us to be here today. As you heard Olivia at the beginning, there are so many heroes out here. But everybody on the call who's watching us, you're the heroes. Because you're the ones who have to go out there and vote, talk to your neighbors, and make sure that they do the right thing. So again, I'm Denver Riggleman. I'm a former Republican congressman, and I know it's a shock. I hope you're eating your popcorn. I'm also a former member of the Freedom Caucus, but I am right now a Harris Walz voter because I think Republicans need the permission structure to vote for the people who actually care about the future. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to some awesome people today. Thank you, Olivia, for doing this. Thank you for everybody on this call. And wait till you hear all the heroes that are coming after me, because they're the ones you need to listen to, and they're the ones who are going to drive this along with me to make sure that Kamala Harris is president and elected in November of 2024. Thank you, and let's go to the next speaker.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you my thoughts about getting more Republicans to vote for Vice President Harris. I am Rosario Marin, and I have the great honor to be the first and only immigrant woman that became Treasurer of the United States. I have been a proud Republican since 1984 when I became a U.S. citizen. I have been a delegate to 5 Republican conventions, starting with Bob Dole, the 2 for President Bush, for Senator McCain, and for Senator Mitt Romney. My conservative Republican credentials will stand any scrutiny. But today I want to specifically reach those Republicans in the swing states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, North Carolina, and Georgia. Your vote can and will make a difference. It is not easy to vote outside your party. Believe me, I know. You may lose friends. Your neighbors may disagree with you. Family gatherings may turn uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, I can assure you that you will know in your heart that you did the right thing. And that is a worthwhile and noble cause. You may say, I can't vote for a Democrat. And I understand that. I certainly don't agree with everything that Kamala Harris has proposed. But the alternative is unacceptable. But don't take it from me. I have never been in the same room with the former president. I didn't work for him. But as I understand it, 40 out of his 44 cabinet members and many of his generals who work directly with him and for him, who have firsthand knowledge of his thinking, of his actions, of his plans, have warned us all of the danger that he represents and that he should not step foot into the White House ever again. My goodness, his own vice president won't even vote for him. As Americans, we are all called to be brave and courageous in the face of adversity, and especially when we must choose between hard, tough choices. But I have learned that there are decisions that, while painful, they're not difficult. Please look at what President Richard Nixon did 50 years ago, and look at what President Joe Biden did just less than a month ago. Clearly, under very different circumstances. But in the end, they did the same thing. They put our country first. They put the United States first. They set aside their own personal political interests and did the right thing. So I ask you, are you willing to protect our country from tyranny? Are you willing to fight for our democracy? Are you willing to protect our nation from what Trump has said, that he will be on day one a dictator? Too many soldiers have given their lives, their bodies maimed, and their spirits humbled, so that all of us would enjoy the freedoms that our great nation has generously given us, including to this immigrant. I did not come to poison our country, the blood of our country. As a matter of fact, I will tell you and share what Nancy Reagan said to me when I met her at her husband's library one day. She said, I only wished Ronnie would have met you. He would have been so proud of you. So I ask you, please stand with all my fellow Republicans here who are hopeful, full of optimism and enthusiasm, joining the people that have toiled every day to make our nation the greatest nation in the world. And so I ask you to vote Kamala Harris. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosario, for your words. I have to say, as a fellow Mexican-American Republican and a fellow Bush alumna, your words certainly resonate with me, and I think they will resonate with many others who feel very similarly to the thing that you just expressed. Moving on to our next speaker, who hails from the great state of Illinois. Big welcome to former U.S. Congressman Joe Walsh.
Olivia, thank you. Rosario, thank you. God bless you. That was beautiful. Thank you, and thank you for your courage. Look, I'm not going to get into Trump. Everybody that's going to speak tonight and everybody listening, we all know Donald Trump is unfit to be president. We don't even need to make that case. That's just a waste of time at this point. I want to congratulate first everybody on this call, all of my fellow speakers who have publicly made the decision to vote for Kamala Harris. Denver, Adam, Olivia, Rosario, Craig, everybody on this call, and so many more. Look, that ain't easy. We all know as Republicans, the minute we do that, the minute you make that step, you could be ending your career as a Republican. That's a big deal. And everybody who has had the courage to do that, that demands, they deserve your praise. But everybody listening to us right now, look, this is one of those rare moments in our country's history where you got to put your country first, where you got to do what you know is right. Again, everybody on the call right now knows that Donald Trump is unfit to be president. So you got to do what's right. you got to step up. You have no choice. And look, I don't mean to offend anybody. It's perfectly well for Nikki Haley, not Nikki Haley, forget about Nikki Haley. It's perfectly well for Mike Pence and Chris Christie to say, I can't support Donald Trump. That's fine. That takes some courage. Some. But to then take the next step as a Republican and to say, I can't support him, so I'm going to vote for the only person who can beat him, and that's her. That takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of courage. And that's what we're asking of everybody on this call. Some of us may be more national faces, but to win this election and to make sure that Trump loses, we need every single Republican, no matter what your level is. You're just a local Republican, you're a neighborhood Republican, you're a state Republican in Pennsylvania. Everybody has to publicly out themselves. And it's not easy, but you have to do it. We got 86 days to do it. You have to publicly out yourself. I am a Republican, I'm a conservative, and I'm supporting Kamala Harris. It takes courage. But remember, Donald Trump is unfit to be president. Final point I want to make is I talk to Trump supporters every day because I used to be a Trump supporter. I talk to them every day. I talk to Republicans every day. You need tools once you out yourself and you come out in Wisconsin, in your neighborhood as a Republican who's voting for Harris. You need tools as you go out there and proselytize. The two best messages I've found to encourage and convince Republicans to oppose Trump and vote for Kamala Harris are these. You're better than Trump thinks you are. You are better and more decent and more tolerant than Donald Trump thinks you are. I have found that when I say that to Trump supporters and I say that to Republicans, that really resonates. The other message that really resonates as I speak to Republicans and as you need to go out and speak to Republicans these next 86 days, because remember, this is all about getting them to vote for Kamala Harris, is ask them a question. Do you want this Republican Party to change? Do you want it to be Ronald Reagan's party again? Do you want it to be a party that stands for freedom and limited government and opportunity again? And generally, they always say yes. And then the answer is the fastest, quickest, easiest way to get that Republican Party back is for Donald Trump to get his ass spanked this November. Trump has to lose. Trump has to lose by a lot. The Republican Party, my friends, on this call, I'm closing, Olivia, I promise. The Republican Party will remain Trump's party unless Trump loses decisively. So if your neighbor, a Republican, doesn't want it to be Trump's party, Trump's got to lose, and he's got to lose by a lot. And that means we Republicans have to vote for the only person who can beat him. I've found that that message really resonates too. God bless you, everybody. Get out there and get ready to go proselytize, no matter where you are. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Congressman Walsh, and you're absolutely right. It's going to take all of us, and it takes tremendous courage to do it, but it's really talking to your neighbors, talking to each other, and making sure that you're having these conversations. And we have to beat him, and we have to beat him by a lot. So next on, I'd like to welcome former RNC delegate, Rea Shaw. Rea, it's so good to have you here tonight. Good to see you again.
Thanks, Olivia, and thanks to all of you who are here with us tonight. I'm a former political operative and, yes, a lifelong Republican. I refuse to leave the Republican Party. I've been trying to be pushed out for years now. I won't leave. I believe our country needs a strong, healthy Republican Party, and that's why I stay. People wonder about me and why I would stay after the treatment I received in 2016 when I became the first elected RNC delegate to buck Donald Trump, to publicly criticize him. My case, which became a legal case, led to me being vindicated, to an independent RNC tribunal saying, don't treat her that way. See, I was a foot soldier for the Republican Party. I'd come up in the exact way I thought you were supposed to come up, all the way from a volunteer to the head of a party platform committee within my local GOP and on the executive committee. I was so deep in Republican politics. I'd served 2 Republican members of the House. I'd established a Republican political consultancy. And yet, that spring, when I decided to open my mouth, exercise my freedom of speech, I had my own come after me. And so what I say is if they could do it to me, one of their own, they could do it to anyone. And when I say they, I mean Donald Trump and all his little minions. These are people who were happy to carry out Trump's will to silence me. Well, when they tried to silence me, what happened? I found my own voice. And I may not have the large footprint a lot of people here tonight have, but the people gathered here at this rally have given me hope and continue to give me hope. So that 8 years later, I continue to fight the fight with the optimism I have today. I know that we can take this party back from Trumpism. And maybe everybody here doesn't agree with me. And that's okay. Part of being American is dissent. And I know about that because my family fled a murderous dictator from Uganda. Idi Amin kicked out my family. And my dad was already in America and had to take over for 7 other siblings, multiple cousins. And my grandfather escaped essentially a genocide and a concentration camp. Dictators cause intergenerational trauma. I know that. I live that almost every day. And I can just tell you, I could spot one from a mile away. I knew Trump, when he came down that golden escalator, wanted to be a king. He still speaks that way. He wants to be an authoritarian. And all we can do now is vote Harris because she stands the best and most solid chance of our party defeating Trumpism once and for all. We have to deny him, not just for children like mine. I have 3 little children that I am working really hard to raise. And I get that some of the policies of the left may not sit well with me. But you know what? You can't have a say if you don't get to the table and lift your voice up. I learned about that, as I just told you, in 2016. But when you stand strong in the face of adversity, which is what I have seen Kamala Harris do over and over again, I know that anything is possible in this country. As the daughter of immigrants from India and Uganda, I know exactly about what Harris had to face, essentially as the daughter of an Indian mother. And when Trump tried to call out her identity, tried to make her feel little and make her seem inauthentic because she was embracing one side of her as a biracial woman, just because she did that didn't mean she was rejecting another side of her. See, I was born in the southern West Virginia coal fields. And when I enter a room and embrace my Indian or African heritage, I'm not rejecting my West Virginian side. I'm just being an American. And I'm speaking to all parts of me. Being American means being complex and recognizing the challenges we have before us and continuing to understand our country can be a more perfect union when we stand and fight. I know Harris and Walsh together have what it takes to lead us to a brighter new day. And I want to say, as a millennial, I wouldn't be a good one if I didn't speak to you through t-shirts tonight. I've got my Country Over Party one here. I've had it for a long time. Also, I'm a mother. And so think about us. All of us on this planet have come from a woman. Think about the women in your life. The draconian bans that Republicans are putting out there want to limit women like me, because when I see that happening, I think it's antithetical to the Republican Party I came up in. I don't want the government in my backyard, my bedroom, my bank account, and certainly not in the medical exam room. This shirt says, your voice is often your greatest accessory. Please lift your voices, talk to people. This election requires you do that. And you talk to them with heart, which leads me to this one. Make empathy great again. We have to care about our fellow Americans. And if we care about this Republican Party and about freedom, the very thing that I said made me a Republican, not the state I grew up in, not because my parents were Republican voters, they weren't. I came to this party because I thought it was a freedom-loving party. We have to do the right thing and do what I said first, which is put country over party and dump Trump again. Thank you guys so much for having me tonight. I look forward to voting with you for Harris and Walsh this fall.
Thank you, Rena. And you know what? Don't leave the party. It was ours before he hijacked it. So just everybody remember that. For those of you who are just joining, just wanted to flag some things for you and flag some things that you can do to support this movement. 1, share your story. 2, volunteer. Please visit kamalaharris.com/Republicans. 3, make a selfie video and tag Reps for Harris. And tell a friend. Visit republicansforharris.substack.com. Next on this all-star lineup, we have Austin Weatherford, the National Republican Engagement Director for the Harris-Walsh campaign. I also want to acknowledge the fact that this is the first time a campaign has brought on someone of a different party to join them. I just want to flag that just as a sign of how they are approaching this coalition and how they're really invested and how Kamala Harris is really doing everything she can to say, you are welcome. You are welcome with us. Austin, take it away.
Oh, Olivia, thanks so much. And thanks for hosting this event with Reed tonight. This has been such a powerful evening. I remember when we were together just a month ago, sitting down in Kalamazoo, Michigan with the vice president, talking to Republicans about women's issues and how the vice president wants to hear from all sides in this environment. So a big thank you to all the speakers and everyone that's been involved and all the endorsers. Truly honored to be with you. As a lifelong Republican, 25 years in Republican politics, this moment means a lot to me. I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and I'm doing this work because I don't want to have to turn off the TV for the next 4 years every time the president speaks. I'm also deeply worried that another Trump presidency would bring more political violence, further divide our families, and destroy the global alliances that have maintained peace and prosperity in this free world since World War II. So we're living in a time of very tribal politics where it's hard for Republicans to speak up. But by joining this call tonight, you are putting country over party. As Mayor John Giles said at the Phoenix rally this week, or last week, you don't owe anything to a party. Look around. Mike Pence, George W. Bush, John McCain, Mitt Romney, and even half of Trump's own cabinet don't support the former president. This is no longer the party of principles, and it shows. So you might remember that one of the first political leaders to call Trump weird, that's been a big thing. Walsh has been calling Trump weird, Vance weird. Well, it wasn't Walsh that called him weird the first time. It was actually George W. Bush at Trump's inauguration. I recommend you read that dark inauguration speech and remind yourself of the bleak vision Trump paints for this country. But tonight, we are here to be part of a growing movement, a campaign within a campaign to build a coalition of Republicans speaking to Republicans about Trump's unfitness to serve. So why Vice President Harris? We may not always agree on every issue, but one thing is clear: the Vice President takes the time to listen and learn all sides of an issue. Just look at her support for the strongest border bill in 25 years, a bill that Trump chose to kill. He only cares about himself, and the party's only caring about protecting him. But we're here because we care about the future for our country, and finding solutions to all these problems. So you've heard the call to action. You've got to sign up online, share your story, kamalaharris.com/Republicans. We need Republicans to remind other Republicans why they are making this decision. The water's warm, and we want to build a big coalition to send a message that the current Republican Party no longer represents the values, principles, and morals that we hold dear. So thanks again for being here tonight. The campaign is excited and encouraged, and we're committed to the country's future. This excitement's building, so let's make history. Thanks, Olivia.
Thank you so much, Austin. And thanks for everything that you've done with the Kamala Harris campaign and expanding this coalition to include all of us. Next up, they say all politics is local. We have some true patriots here who have served as leaders at the state level. Chris Vance, we have the former Washington State Republican Party chair. Chris, are you here?
I'm definitely here. Thanks, Olivia. My name is Chris Vance. I'm a former Republican lawmaker I was the Republican State Party chairman in Washington State. And in 2016, I was the Republican nominee for the United States Senate in Washington State. And now I am a proud Republican supporting Kamala Harris, because an election is a choice. And in this election, there is no choice on national security, on growing our economy, and particularly on defending the Constitution and the rule of law. So I have been active in this movement as long as I can. And 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, I saw a tweet saying, when are we going to have a Republicans for Harris call? And so I texted Austin. I tend to bother Austin a lot. And he said, hey, why don't you help organize it? And so we pulled together a team to put this together. And it's just been a tremendous success very quickly. And I want to thank, more than anyone, Olivia's been fantastic, but Reed Howard with Young Republicans for Harris has taken the lead on this. He's just done an incredible job. We all owe Reed a tremendous debt of gratitude. There's another person I want to highlight tonight. His name is Michael Broadcore. I believe he's on the call. He is the former deputy chairman of the Minnesota Republican Party, and he just joined our movement and wrote a tremendous op-ed in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune about why he is supporting Kamala Harris. And that's exactly what we need to be doing at this point. We're still in the phase where we need to tell the world we exist, that this movement is out there and growing. And then we're going to transition, of course. And so do the things that you saw, the calls to action that Olivia highlighted. You know, put out, make a selfie, do a video, volunteer, because we need to get the word out. Go to kamalaharris.com/Republicans or text GOP to 3030330. Later in the fall, I think I'm going to be working with Austin, and we're going to be reaching out to all the battleground chairmen of Republicans for Harris to build a grassroots plan to allow Republicans to give permission to other Republicans to this one time maybe vote for a Democrat, Kamala Harris, because the future of our country depends on it. So this is a historic moment. I've never seen the other party have such a program inside a campaign. It is just tremendous, because we all know we love our country. We all wish the Republican Party could be what it once was. And so therefore, to do all those things, we have to win this election. So Olivia, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for everything you've done these past couple of years. You've been a true supporter for many of us, and you have stayed the course, so we appreciate it. Next, I'm going to call on Jennifer Horn, who served as the former New Hampshire Republican Party chair. Jennifer?
Olivia, thank you so much. And thank you to all the thousands of people, the tens of thousands of people who are tuning in right now to be part of this conversation. It's not just historic. It's so important for the preservation of the future of our country, for the preservation of a free, independent, democratic, optimistic, encouraging America for our children and our grandchildren. And that's why I got involved in politics to begin with. I was the first woman nominated to federal office in the great state of New Hampshire by the Republican Party. I've also served as their chairman for two terms. I served on the executive committee at the RNC. I was and remain a true believer in the conservative principles, the conservative foundational principles of freedom, liberty, and constitutional leadership. I continue to fight for that to this day. But I'm not here so much to give you permission to vote as you see fit, as hopefully to join us as Republican, because with all due respect to our previous speakers, I don't think you need my permission. I want to encourage you to listen to the stories, to listen to where we came from, and hopefully hear from our, where we're speaking from our hearts, and see something there, hear something there that you can really latch onto, that will encourage you and uplift you, and in a way that will allow you or inspire you to take this action that we're asking you to take. I had a lot of thoughts about what to say tonight. I wanted to talk about democracy. I thought about talking about Project 2025. I thought about talking about how a lost democracy actually touches us individually. But I think a lot of people are covering that, and that's really important. I'm glad that it's there. So I've changed my mind. at the last minute. And I'm going to tell you, I want to talk to you a little bit about my mom and dad. One of the greatest blessings of my life is that when we all had to go into quarantine for COVID, my husband and I were taking care of my parents. We were at their home in Florida, and we ended up spending a few months with them down there during that time. So I had this wonderful opportunity to, at very near the end of their lives, I'll say, to spend so much more time with them, to have deeper conversations with them, to have an experience that no matter how much I love them or how much time I had spent taking care of them before that, this was different, and it was powerful, and it was one of the greatest gifts I've ever experienced. And my parents were both Republicans, both conservatives, both Donald Trump supporters. With my dad, it was to the point that he and I kind of had to make an agreement before, years before that we just wouldn't discuss politics anymore. Or we'd get to a point in that discussion where I'd always have to say, Dad, I love you. I know you love me. I think it's time to end this conversation. So one day during the lockdown, my dad and I were standing out on his driveway trying to get some fresh air and, hoping there'd be neighbors we could wave to or talk to. And we got into this conversation about Donald Trump again. And he said something to me that really triggered me, really got me going, when he said, "Your real concern, the only thing you're worried about with Trump is this woman thing, right? You're just upset because of the stories that all of these women have told." And it just struck me because it was so antithetical to anything that I would have known about my dad or would have said about my dad when it came to equality and opportunity and dignity and things like that. And I said, Dad, yeah, that's a big part of it, but it's because you taught me those values. You taught me that I'm supposed to speak up for myself. You taught me not to tolerate this kind of behavior or approach or language from men in my life. And I kind of went on a little bit of a rant with him. And I could tell that I took him by surprise when I got going. And he, my dad wasn't big for acknowledging that maybe he needs to rethink things or acknowledging that he was wrong. But he did in that moment. We had a conversation in that moment about the personal impact that a Donald Trump presidency was having on me and my sisters and my girlfriends and all the other women that my dad had ever, known or worked with or promoted or anything like that. And it was in that conversation that my dad learned that I had been sexually assaulted as a young woman. And it was in that conversation that for the first time, I really was able to, in a very emotional way, share with him my feelings about being a mother and about being a mother who was raised by him and by my mom. So I think it's really powerful, really important that we share our stories, not just as women, not just as Republicans who have already decided to vote for Trump, but as all of you, anybody out there who's thinking about it, who's embracing the idea of it for the first time, or maybe after many years of struggling with it. It's okay. You can step outside your party. You can step outside your tribe and do what you believe is the right thing to do. It doesn't mean you have to unregister as a Republican. It doesn't mean that you have to tell the whole world that you're not voting Republican. But it's okay for us to look at our own lives and to really reflect on the impact that who the leader of the free world has, not just on these very grand concepts like democracy and global leadership, but on us personally as mothers and fathers and daughters and service workers and whatever it is that you do in your life that's so important to you. I have always said that the reason that I am involved in politics is because I'm a mom. When I first got involved, my kids were in middle school and high school, and they have always been anything I've ever done. Let's take politics out of it. Anything I've ever invested time and energy into have been because I believed I was contributing to something that would make the world a better place for my kids. And here I am all these years later. I don't just have 5 children. I now have 6 grandchildren. And I can say that's why I am voting for Kamala Harris, because I want a future for my children and my grandchildren that embraces freedom and liberty and equality and democracy, but also dignity and inclusion and enthusiasm and optimism. I can't stand the thought of my kids and my grandkids living another 4 years under the ugly, divisive Armageddon vision of America that Donald Trump has.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Let me just
Go ahead.
finish by saying very quickly, Olivia, we truly live in the greatest nation on earth. We truly do. That's what we want to preserve. That's the inspiration. That's the uplift. And it's Kamala Harris's embrace of that concept and the enthusiasm and the inspiration and the energy and the optimism that she is bringing to the trail that makes it so easy for me to vote for her this time around.
Thank you, Jennifer Horton. I just want to give a quick shout out to Danny S., who said, he's in the chat, and he says, I voted GOP since Reagan, but voting Harris won't. Thank you, Danny. Thanks for joining the Coalition of the Willing. And I also want to tell you guys, we have now over 40,000 people on the call, and that is incredible. And that is a sign of the power of us coming together and taking a stand together. Now I'm going to hand it over to someone who's been championing this group of voters and galvanizing their support for a better future for our country. We have Craig Snyder, who leads Haley Voters for Harris.
Thanks, Olivia. I have been a Republican, although I was raised in a Democratic household since when I was a young adult. I saw how Ronald Reagan turned the cultural and social and economic malaise of the Carter years into the Morning in America renewal of the 1980s and turned the abject disgrace of the fall of Saigon into the triumph of the fall of the Berlin Wall. I have been a GOP nominee for Congress, a chief of staff to a Republican United States Senator, Arlen Specter, and played various consulting roles in numerous GOP campaigns, including the presidential campaigns of Bob Dole and John McCain. In the business of politics, I have worked with some now infamous folks, including Paul Manafort and Roger Stone. And through them, I had a front row seat to Trump's earliest forays into politics, including his mostly forgotten first run for president in the year 2000. So, as Vice President Harris now likes to say about Trump, I know his type. It was a time where we saw the kind of invasion of the body snatchers going on in our party in 2016. And I became, at that time, I guess, a sort of OG never Trumper in the spring of 2016, before he'd won the nomination, because I knew from earlier experience back almost 2 decades before that he was simply grotesquely unfit by temperament and by character to be president, and that the views that he espouses are nearly the opposite of the worldview of Ronald Reagan that brought me into the party, that his views are, in fact, we have to call it what it is, neo-fascist. The campaign that I'm involved with now that Olivia mentioned, Haley Voters for Harris, we are executing, starting from the fact, excuse me, that more than 1 million swing state voters, including me and 160,000 other registered Republicans in Pennsylvania's closed primary, voted for Ambassador Haley after Trump was already the presumptive nominee, because we wanted to send a strong message of being, at the very least, never Trump again Republicans, even if some had voted for Trump in the past. We are under no illusion in the group that I'm working with that all of these voters are ready and willing today to vote for the vice president. As you've heard from many speakers here, it can be really hard to root against and to work against what has been your team. And frankly, not all Democrats are welcoming. Sometimes there are folks on the other side who find our immigrant Republican culture to be distasteful rather than offering a path to citizenship. We also know that there are going to be many hundreds of millions of dollars spent to try to convince these voters, Republican voters, that Harris and Walsh are Stalin and Mao, that they are going to turn America into one giant HR workshop on white privilege, and they're going to try to force your toddlers to take puberty blockers. That's what we're going to be hearing for the next 86 days. Our job is to present trusted Republican voices to Haley voters and other center-right folks in this country, and just tell them the truth, which is that Kamala Harris is a tough prosecutor who has been attacked in most of her career from the left, not from the right, as being cop Mala and now killer Kamala. It is significant left opposition that she has faced. And National Guardsman and Heartland football coach Tim Walsh, the two of them will only be radical when they win in defense of the rule of law and against the authoritarianism of Trump, both foreign and domestic. When the Harris team wins and prevents the sudden death of American democracy, we can joyfully return, people, to arguing over marginal tax rates and the role of government in healthcare and all of the other kinds of issues that defined our politics for generations, which we didn't know it at the time were being played between the 40-yard lines and now are being played from the extremes. So our PAC intends to help these potentially decisive voters, including, I think, many who are watching tonight, take the final step, having already rejected Trump, to join a great American coalition, a great American majority that becomes an antibody response in our body politic to the devastating autoimmune disease that is represented by MAGA. We hope you'll join us too.
Thank you so much, Craig. For our next guest, first and foremost, I know I do this every time I see him or when I hear him speak, but I always thank him for his courage and his commitment to country over party, especially country first. Former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, the floor is yours.
Hey, thank you. It's good to see everybody. It's great to see everybody on the call. Look, I know there's some people on the call that, never voted for Donald Trump once, but let's be clear, probably the vast majority of people that are considering being Republicans for Harris voted for Donald Trump once or twice, and now trying to wrestle with, okay, I voted for him in 2016 and in 2020. Is now the time to break away? I'd like to just mention a couple people that I was thinking of. So Rich Lodges. Rich Lodges was a hardcore MAGA guy. He, in fact, told me, he said, I used to hate you. And he apologized for that, which he didn't need to apologize, but I appreciate it. He's got a Twitter handle. It's @PerfectOurUnion. And it's called Leaving MAGA. So this is somebody that after January 6th began wrestling with, what is this? How can I defend this? And then came to the full realization that it's time to move on. And we don't have to have regrets for who we supported in the past. It's about what are we going to do for the future? What's it going to be for our kids? And I also want to mention somebody that I've gotten to know very recently a little bit, Pam Hamill. She was actually arrested on January 6th for going into the Capitol and has since been out there talking about how much of a mistake that was, how Donald Trump is leading a cult and how it's okay to walk away. So I think it's important for all of us to just remember, just because maybe you voted for Trump in 16 or 20, we all can sometimes wake up and say, you know what, we thought it was going to work a different way, but the reality is our democracy is in danger. But look, I'm not one of these that, believes that there's not going to be an election in 2028 if Donald Trump wins. I think that's a bit dramatic. But what I will say is the faith in our democracy is constantly being chipped away by Donald Trump. When he convinces a third of the country that an election was stolen, how can you ever believe in democracy if you truly believe an election was stolen from you? Because it wasn't stolen, but it's in his interest to say it was, because he can never be seen as a loser. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I was there on January 6th. I got to live through that violence. There was a period in time where I thought they were going to come to my office and go after me. Nowhere in the United States of America should we ever have anything like that. Nowhere should that ever be acceptable. And had the Republican Party and even Donald Trump said, look, I'm going to take full accountability for what was done, that went out of control, it should never happen again, that would be one thing. But Donald Trump instead says he's going to pardon everybody that participated. They were heroes. He calls them hostages, comparing them, because he started it after October 7th, comparing them to the hostages in Gaza. That's not the kind of country we want to raise our kids in. So when somebody asks me, how can you as a conservative vote for Kamala Harris, who's a liberal or a moderate left or whatever you want to call her? Well, it's very easy in military terms. If I have two targets, one is far off and one is 5 meters from my trench, I'm going to focus on the 5 meter target. The 5 meter target is the threat to democracy. The 20, 30 meter off target is the differences we have in policies. If we can eliminate this threat to democracy, proverbially, if we can seal up our democracy and restore faith in our election system, if we can defeat Donald Trump, then we can go back to the luxury of arguing about policy again, because that's what democracy is. Democracy is arguing about policies, right? It's arguing about policies. It's what we do. So I'll wrap up with this, because less is more. Let's think of what all generations in America have done to defend this country. Look at the people, by the way, in Ukraine today standing against Russia. And many in our party say they shouldn't be doing that. But I think about my grandfather in World War II. I think about the Korean War, Vietnam, my generation after 9/11, putting their lives on the line to defend this country. We're not asking for anybody to put their life on the line. We're just saying, maybe once, and just this one time if necessary, keep the label of Republican, but vote to defend this democracy. This uncomfortable alliance we have is the only thing that's going to defend the faith in our election system. Thank you all for being here, and God bless you.
Thank you so much for that, Congressman Kinzinger. Next up, we have someone who has exhibited tremendous leadership, integrity, and who really upheld his oath to the Constitution and the fundamental principles of our democracy, given everything that he and the leadership of his state faced in the aftermath of the 2020 election. I'm honored to welcome former Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, Jeff Duncan.
There we go. I was on mute. I haven't figured out how to use Zoom yet. Thank you, Olivia, for that introduction. And, I've had a front row seat for the current downward spiral of the Republican Party here in Georgia, unfortunately. I've got to see Donald Trump at his worst. I've got to see his followers at their worst. I got to see the maximum amount of pressure put on our state to try to rig an election for him. And fortunately for the Republican Party, fortunately for the country, we were able to withstand that pressure and maintain a fair and legal election, despite Donald Trump's best wishes. This is not position A. I've been a lifelong Republican. I was raised in a Republican household. I'm a conservative by nature. That's how I problem solve. And so when I ran for office for the first time in this community here in Forsyth County, Georgia, it was an 80-20 district. I was conservative and still am conservative. I just believe those answers solve a lot of these problems. But I watched decisions be made behind the curtain by Donald Trump. I watched a cult be birthed, and I watched followers just walk off the deep end of the plank for Donald Trump. And so as this started to play out, not just in 2020, but even before, right? We got to see Donald Trump put pressure on us for how we reacted to COVID here against Governor Kemp and myself and several others in decisions that we were making. So I could kind of see this train wreck coming, but would have never have guessed it would have gotten as bad as it got in 2020 with the election. Look, I just want my party back, right? Selfishly speaking, I'm supporting Kamala Harris because I think she's a steadier hand than Donald Trump will ever be. I think it will create an opportunity for us to have 4 years to heal and rebuild this party. I feel so strongly about it. I've even written a book. Many of you all have seen this. Nearly 4 years ago, I wrote this book, GOP 2.0. It played out what would happen if we didn't take our own medicine. And unfortunately, we're here. But thankfully, we actually have an alternative. We have a different solution. And although I don't agree with 100% of Kamala Harris's policies, we do agree on several policies. One is that Donald Trump can never, ever, ever be in charge of anything ever again in this country. And I think it's important for us to remind ourselves, just because we vote for Kamala Harris in 2024 doesn't mean we are Democrats. It just means we are patriots. We're doing our duty to be able to build this party back. And, I just continue to remind myself as lieutenant governor, I get to serve as the president of the Senate. And so I worked across party lines because it was important to me, not because I needed the votes, but because I wanted to see policies and laws shape themselves. And so I really buy into what Donald Trump has said. Somebody who's with you 80% of the time is a friend and an ally, not a 20% traitor. And I really think we need to soak that in as Republicans who are going to vote for Kamala Harris. And I want to encourage this group to take this to heart. What story do you want to tell your kids and grandkids? Do you want to tell them when they ask about this election, when they ask about this chaotic period of time, this temporary moment of insanity for the Republican Party? Do you want to tell them that you voted for a morally bankrupt person, a womanizer, an indicted felon, a convicted felon, just because he had an R next to his name? Or do you want to tell them that you had the courage to vote for somebody that was morally decent, that was a steadier hand, that you disagreed with on a handful of policies? I hope that answer is that you had the courage to vote for somebody that is decent. Last but not least, I know many of you might think that you're not going to just vote for anybody. You're going to show up to the polls, you're going to vote down ballot, and you're not going to vote for the top of the ticket. That's making a point. That's making a point that Donald Trump is horrible. I want you to make a difference. And to make a difference, you've got to vote for Kamala Harris and be able to send Donald Trump packing and never, ever, ever run anything in the Republican Party again. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And and it looks like we have over 50,000 people that have joined the call now. Something like we're getting close to 60,000. So, I mean, that's an amazing number of people who have tuned in to kind of just be part of building this coalition together. And so now in this moment, when many Republicans, independents, and moderate conservatives find ourselves working together to build this coalition of the willing against Donald Trump and his MAGA movement, I suppose we could call it a rebel alliance of sorts, if you will. It is my great pleasure and amazing privilege to welcome our favorite Jedi, the amazing Mark Hamill.
There, I'm off mute. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this. I can't tell you how grateful I am for people putting country over party. And you've all done that. To me, that's the mark of true patriotism, because we've never seen a situation that is so wrought with danger for our future. There is no, at the moment, there is no Republican Party. There is a MAGA cult of personality. I have Republican friends. Thankfully, they're not MAGA, but you are a crucial component of the coalition that we're going to need to end MAGA once and for all, so that the Republican Party can come back. The reasonable, sane Republicans. Now, obviously, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and we have policy issues, but nothing like what we're facing now. I actually watched all 2 hours of Elon Musk and him last night. He doesn't learn. Everything was just overwhelmingly negative. We're going into World War III. We're going to have a stock market crash like 1929, the Great Depression. He's singling out countries. There are people coming from the Congo. It's all about immigrants and fear. I mean, he appeals to the darkest elements of human nature: fear, anger, resentment. And I think that we're very well placed with the ticket we have that is joyful, that is optimistic, that loves our country and wants the best for our country, because joy beats negativity every time. So I'm going to keep this short. There are people so much more qualified to be speaking. All I can do is make sure people are registered to vote. Go to iwillvote.com. It's very easy. And make sure that everyone is voting. That's the terrible. The statistics are astonishing. There were like 40 to 50 million people that were registered to vote that didn't vote in 2020. Now, mind you, I read that on the internet, so take it with a grain of salt. But clearly, if people turned out, there's more of us than there are of them. It's as simple as that. So tell your friends to tell their friends to tell their friends to vote. That's what we've got to do. And as they say, it's going to be all gas, no pedal until November 5th. But thank you again. Thank you all so much for realizing that party comes second to what's best for our country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark Hamill. And just to remind everyone, please, you've heard a lot of different stories, perspectives tonight about why people are making this decision to join this coalition of the willing and support Kamala Harris. Remember to share your story. Please volunteer. Please visit kamalaharris.com/Republicans. Make a selfie video, tag Reps for Harris, and tell a friend. And I'm going to hand it back to Reed Howard, who kicked it off. He had some technical difficulties at the beginning, so I just wanted to circle back with him.
Thanks, Olivia. And Mark, thank you so much for joining us. It's very fun to have you here, and I think that's the spirit of joy that infuses this campaign. So I'm grateful for all the speakers tonight. I just want to say I've heard from a lot of young Republicans all throughout the country who are tired of the direction and the negativity that is surrounding MAGA and surrounding what the Republican Party has become nowadays. And I got involved in this. I'm a Republican because I believe that our Constitution is the greatest governing document that has ever been created. I believe in the rule of law and that no person should be above the law, even if they are the president. And I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia, and my hometown is a NATO town. And so I know the importance of strong global alliances and standing with our Democratic allies. And those are all values that attracted me to the Republican Party. In 2014, I was 20 years old and I got elected to local office as a registered Republican. And I was dang proud to be a Republican. And I think we can get to a place that the people in my generation, the Gen Z and millennial Republicans, we're going to live in a country that has two healthy parties. And the best way to get there is by defeating Donald Trump in November. That's why I'm really proud to support Vice President Harris, because I don't agree with her on all these policies. A lot of young Republicans don't agree with her, but we know that it's really effective to beat Donald Trump so we can get MAGA gone and build the party that's going to bring us into a bright future for our country. Because I think our best days are ahead. I have no doubt about that. And what we do to organize, to get involved, and to win in November is going to set our party on a path, because America needs two healthy parties. So I'm really excited that so many people joined the call. Thank you to 60,000 people who joined us tonight. That's beyond our wildest expectations. Again, these are Republicans who are on this call. So I'm fired up. I hope you're fired up with me and that you'll join us in this movement to put country over party. Thank you.